kind of talk about, I'm currently in the Twin Cities right now. Really grateful for Frontline Medics to help with this training. And we're all doing 16 hours worth of training in 2 hours. So it'll be a lot of information, so bear with us. I just want to also give thanks to groups that are on the ground right now. And if I miss any Black Indigenous groups who are on the ground, feel free to put them in the chat and type them. Just want to give a shout out to Black Visions Collective, MPD 150, Divine Natural Ancestry, Tamales and Bicicletas, to Indian Health Board and Little Earth, American Indian Center, and Women's Indian Center. There's many that I'm missing. I think there's like Herbal Justice Network. But yeah, thank you everyone for the work you're doing and for the people who aren't in groups as well. And we're all doing as much as we can. So excited to share space with y'all.
Hi, I'm E. I'm currently in Tongva territory. Some shit popped off last night in downtown Los Angeles, and I had written a thing about like kettles within kettles and kind of formations in terms of studying police tactics in Los Angeles. And yeah, it's, you know, downtown is a lot to process, especially when there's so many police. So yeah, I was just acting medic and got caught in the kettle. And but I'm out now, and I really appreciate people donating. I've never been in a kettle situation where I wasn't like just cited and released right there. They actually cuffed us, and it sounds like that's what they were doing to a lot of people around the country, was citing and releasing. They but they did cuff us and take us to the precinct, the nearest precinct, and yeah, we were there for like at least 4 hours waiting, and then they just let us all go and said the next time we're coming through, or the next time we come back, like today, and people got like arrested again, then they would be looking people. So just bear that in mind. That's all.
All right, cool. So yeah, welcome everyone that's showing up. I am going to be going by A for this training. I would also recommend folks, if you feel inclined, in this training and when you're out on the streets, to change your name up. You can change your name on the screen here. We understand that there's all kinds of surveillance happening. We did what we could to make this space for POC, for frontliners. If there's any cops in here, get the fuck out. Just make sure that, you know, we're trying to hold these spaces, but we understand the surveillance state we're in. So that is why our cameras are going to be off for the duration of this training, which I know makes it a little bit harder to connect, but we'll try to be entertaining. Personally, I am an EMT. I work on the West Coast in an emergency room, as well as with COVID positive patients since the pandemic started. This collective came out of Indigenous land defense and land occupations about 4 years ago. And it came from the realization that if we are going to be effective in liberating ourselves and liberating our people, we have to be able to defend and protect ourselves in every single way. So building the skills that we have, you know, this is just one skill in a toolkit. You know, we deeply believe that everyone should learn a little bit of healthcare. Not everyone here needs to, you know, do extensive training. If it's not your bag, that's all right. But everyone should know enough to be able to create a better outcome for yourself and those people around you, to give yourself a better chance of survival when we're dealing with people who literally just want to continue the genocide that's been going on with us. The collective also focuses on deprofessionalizing healthcare, right? Because we understand that our people are competent, we are capable of having these skills, and it doesn't need to be relegated just to people that have access and the privilege to access formal education. So a lot of this stuff comes from ancestral knowledge. It comes from a lot of our traditions as healers, as survivors, And we're just here to continue that. So I'll pass it on to our next facilitator to do the intro.
Hey y'all, my name is T. I'm gonna go by T today, and pronouns are they, them. As A was sharing, you know, we've been collectively formulating curriculum and community and spaces for the past 4 years. And I am showing up here as an herbalist, also a birth worker, amongst other skills. So we are honored that y'all are here and gathering with us. So thank you for making the time, and thank you for making the commitment, not to only to yourself, but to your communities as we rise up.
I'm E. I was speaking before about, yeah, just doing kind of organizing all over, a lot of mutual aid work, and had started my trainings and doing trainings with Frontline Medics a few years ago, and I'm not certified, but yeah, I've just been learning a lot from them, and I do have a lot of practice in regard to yeah, civil unrest, insurrection, what have you, and yeah, thank you all for coming.
All right, cool. So next part I just want to share is a little bit of a content warning, heads up. We are going to be talking about, as this is a medic training, physical trauma, which, as we know, is just part of also can cause a lot of emotional trauma. You know, one of the main medic principles is to do no harm. We don't want to do harm to anybody here. It is very difficult to continue to give content warnings. We're going to talk about intense things, especially with the time crunch that we're in today. So, you know, as a blanket statement, this is going to be covering some things graphic and in detail. So if you need to, you know, excuse yourself, please do so.
All right, we're gonna start off with just a short discussion on decolonizing care. So when we talk about decolonizing care, we want to bring up the facts that, you know, there's a lot of the trauma when it comes to the Western medical industrial complex. So that can show up when we are out on the streets. So we want to be extremely gentle, and we're going to go through in detail about how to go about approaching someone that may be needing assistance. But we also want to mention the fact that, you know, through this curriculum, we're going to be sharing lots of different techniques. Not all of them are going to fit within our quote unquote, you know, first aid kit. But just know wherever your strong points are. I, as an herbalist, come in and I do have lots of herbs and tinctures and things of that sort that I carry on with me, but I'm not going to push that on to anyone while I am trying to tend to them. So decolonizing care, all in all, just kind of goes to say that we want to be gentle with our approaches. We want to understand that there is a lot of trauma that may be brought up when we are interacting with police, when we are interacting with medical personnel, and also, you know, street medics. So just being gentle in that approach, and we will continue with jumping in with supremacy of Western medicine as well.
Okay, so I think there's a lot to say about the supremacy of Western medicine, and we're also gonna have some helpful visual aids in some of our later conversations, but just to go over some, like, we always are doing things through like an anti-colonial lens. So we have like a really hard critique of the Western knowledge production, and like A was saying earlier, that industrialization is not sustainable for a lot of our people. You know, like a lot of us have come to the conclusion that capitalism, industrialization, just Western ways of knowing and being are toxic, and they're destroying the planet, but also destroying Black and Indigenous and people of color. So yeah, that in itself is a lot to take in. I bring up the idea of like resistance to human supremacy and the centralization of like human knowledge production and thought. I think it's really arrogant to assume that you can only learn from books, as well as, yeah, just other forms of knowledge sharing that is inherently, is just Western, or is just from books, or is just from humans. Yeah, capitalism is just so tied into all of that. And I think we need to prepare the space time for when herbal medicines are very needed for the present and the future. It's like there's like a huge push right now, especially with pandemic and then the police violence, to really like, the land is calling for us to come back to it. And I think developing those relationships, like T was talking about in decolonizing, that it's really important, just because we're gonna need those relationships, and we're realizing that the relationships that we have to the state or industrialization is like a coerced and kind of imposed one.
All right, cool. So getting into community medic principles. We know y'all are out there holding shit down, and we're gonna do as best we can to prepare y'all just a little bit more, share whatever we can, and see if it's helpful. One of the biggest, tenets to hold while you're moving through these spaces is to really know your limitations, and that goes hand in hand with the principle of doing no harm. So if you come across a situation that is beyond your scope of experience, that is when you seek help from someone else that may have more experience. And that's when it's good to know who in your squad happened to take the wilderness first aid training, or who maybe has been a migrant who has traveled a lot extensively and has had to care for themselves, who holds like the ancestral remedies. So really understanding what your limitations are. Unfortunately, medicing and like healthcare attracts a lot of folks with God complexes, who feel like they can just save people, and there can be a lot of ego involved. There are also, of course, a lot of good-hearted people who are trying to do things in a good way, but just to understand that in identifying yourself as a medic, there is a power dynamic that arises with a patient who is going to be in maybe the most vulnerable state of their lives, right? People are hurting, people are scared, they may not be able to see, they may be intensely sick and afraid, and you are positioning yourself to be in to be in the role to alleviate that situation for them. That's a big power dynamic there. So keep that in mind as you're moving through this. Also, we're gonna be I feel like I've already said this a couple times, I'm gonna keep saying it, we are barely scratching the surface. For folks to be able to treat certain conditions or things that arise, sometimes it does take, hundreds of hours of training to be able to do so competently. But we're going to go over the basics, like what is the common sense stuff that you can do if someone is hurt, until you can get them to higher care if that's necessary, or just to make sure that a small problem doesn't become a big problem for them. Last thing I want to touch on is one of a huge principle as well is going to be always getting consent. And there's consent that maybe in terms of ways that we haven't even thought of, right? Like a lot of times I feel like this crowd might not be the one that's super quick to call 911, but sometimes things can get scary, and calling an ambulance may be the right choice. If you are out with your group of friends, it's an easy thing to check in. At what point would you want me to call an ambulance for you? But that changes if someone is undocumented. That changes if someone is on the run. That changes if someone, has maybe a lot of trauma from hospitals, right? Like it's not, hospitals aren't always safe spaces for people, especially for neurodivergent folks. So those are just some real basic things. Again, we've done these trainings over 2 days, over full days. I don't think we've done a 2-hour training yet. So this is all very condensed, but I can't emphasize the importance enough of these foundational principles.
All right, I'm gonna turn over to culturally appropriate care. Just to go over some basics of like language justice, for example. If you are supporting people in their homelands, honor their homelands, honor their language, and yeah, like just acknowledging who people's abilities, as well as like whether they have physical disabilities, their gender. I know that when I did attempt to take an EMT class, they really were falling behind on gender politics, and I was really upset because like you know, it's like trans men can get pregnant too, and like that's one of the steps of like making sure people are safe, and that just wasn't included, and I was surprised. But also, yeah, neurodivergent people, people with mental health disabilities, or emotional health disabilities, can also, that also includes like not calling the police, obviously, when, you know, people are acting out of what you think is quote unquote normal. But yeah, so then also there's been a lot of dismissing of traditional medicines and ceremonies, even and especially in the kind of EMT medical health profession. You know, like we read all the shit that like some of these EMT pages say when somebody like breaks their arm. They're like, oh, put lavender on it, and they make jokes and stuff, and that's great. But like, you know, there are also some like key herbs. Well, T will explain later that like are very helpful for healing wounds, and so you know, have respect for that. But emotional and spiritual care, and then also validating people's skepticism of the state, obviously, because it's been genociding against Black and Indigenous people of color for over 500 years. And there's been a history of sterilizations, a history of abuse, a history of taking, literally the entire reproductive system is born off of Black enslaved Black women's bodies, or Black people designated female at birth bodies. And yeah, like just acknowledge that there is skepticism around a lot of the medical industrial complex as it is.
I did want to just mention one more thing about one of the things that medics sometimes do is bring over-the-counter medications to trainings and hand them out. I want to really, you know, encourage people to understand that if we could set up like a medic tent somewhere, ideally we would be able to maybe put out some over-the-counter medications that people could take as they need, as they know what they need, right? Like they know how this interacts with their body, they know how they're going to react to it. But we can't be out there handing out aspirin, handing out medications like that, because of, for one, the liability issues. Two, you know, there is certain medications that can cause that act as blood thinners, and if you do end up having a traumatic injury that causes you to bleed, it may, you know, give you a worse outcome. So I want to discourage that too for there is a way to make things available for people versus handing that out, so that you are not out there like, you're prescribing things to people. So just to touch on that too.
Thumbs up. Okay. So this is just some protocols. I'm gonna be going over some buddy systems, security culture, communications, and just some other topics. But for this component, I want to touch on buddying up. I call it an account of compatibility buddy. I don't even know where I came up with that, but
so I'm just going to share that doc with everybody in the chat. So if you want to pull it up to read, it's going to be available to view. And we'll keep doing that with other documents that that come up.
Right.
So for folks that can't see the screen share, we'll be talking through it. And we'll also send this to you in a follow-up email so you can read it more in depth.
Okay, so for buddying up, yeah, I was talking about account of compatibility buddy. Basically, you want to team up with people, like-minded people, obviously. Affinity groups are very, very, very helpful. So in choosing a partner to be accountable to, that doesn't mean you have to be on them the whole time. It just means you have to keep your eye on them. And yeah, street medics usually work in pairs, sometimes triads or clusters. And this should be in affinity, and I'll go over some security around that a little later, but always stick with your partners. They can provide a second or third opinions. This can help carry injured patients or multiple treaters for patient with multiple skill sets, and or act as a witness. Should anything happen to bring them information to the larger team, collective group. If there's mass arrests, if you're split up, you can no longer find your buddy, have their contact info and their state issued names and birth date. If they would like to be bailed out, for example, would they want to be public or on social media regarding incarceration? Car keys are so important when you're parking and like considering car towing and things like that. You don't want to be in a situation where one of your comrades gets arrested with the car keys. That makes so much work for your whole team. But it's fine. It's not, your comrade's fault. It's the police, obviously. Whether they want work or immediate relatives to know of arrest. So for me, I often am like, I don't want anyone worrying about me. Please don't, publicize my arrest. When I was thinking I was getting arrested yesterday, I was like, some of us have priors, some of us are public people who are targeted for who we are, whether we're trans or Black or Indigenous. There's so many reasons, and it might be a good idea to send that text like, I am in my right mind, I am not suicidal. If something happens to me, burn this shit down. In any case, know thy partner's limits. Example, who they are, if they're undocumented, if they experience chronic illness and pain. Check in often, regularly, consider their allergies or other medications or needs. And that's just being accountable. And then compatibility is also really important too. There's a lot of nuanced discussion about this, because typically people who are like, they call it being in like the green zone, it's like, it might be it's safer, they're non-arrestables, they're like, or I'm sorry, they're non-arrestables, they don't want to get arrested, they might have disabilities, they're in like a green zone, and they're just not arrestable, and it might be better off for them to be with other people like them. In terms of medic situations, gauge level of risk or arrestability together, establish your roles between each other and as street medics, and just stick with them. And then kind of relating to security, I'd say, to mask up or not. Like if it's a riskier protest / direct action, demo masking up is often even needed for medics to prevent doxing and targeting or future criminalization. So like, we're obviously, our team isn't like doing anything wrong. Like we're responding to people getting brutalized by the police. But there's still white supremacists that exist. There's still, shady people that are against us that exist. So like doxing may happen and targeting may happen. And just to give yourself a helpful barrier between that, you can also just like, wearing a mask is helpful. And especially right now, because COVID-19 is very real, and we've put up a lot of information on just COVID and how important it is right now for people to shelter in place, or at least, keep up physical distance practices. So establish the names you'll be using at an action. For example, in this meeting, I go by E. My pronouns are they and she, and the police are not who I want to be. No. But if it's not your real or identifiable name, you'll want to stick to a name to build trust with future patients. And like also, dependent on the level of risk or injury, quickly showing your face can also provide added trust and consent to treat your patient. Who you can still act as an intentional street medic while protecting your identity from those who dox. Again, collective anonymity can prevent your comrades, and those you are trying to help or support from being targeted by the state and statist sympathizers. So, like people are out here like targeting people, and like they're, Ferguson uprisers, where a lot of them were killed. A lot of them are dead now because of like the shady practices of people. I'm gonna move on to the security culture for a little bit. Just because we're on the topic of security. I think, it's like, I was just talking to comrades about like how we're often at other trainings I've done relative to the police or like cop watch or what have you, like just talking about how it's important. We might not be explicitly trying to create a large mass like organization or large mass kind of group to do medicing with, because it requires trust, and I don't know like a lot of people. So I think it's really important that formulating patrol units or organizations or group, that's great if you want to do that, but like infiltration is real. Political tensions between differing ideologies is also very real. And there's like histories of abusive people, people who are abusers is real. So it's like, do what you want to do, but like know that like you should be organizing an affinity with who you layers of trust should be involved. But a little bit for people who don't know what security culture is. Security culture is a set of customs shared by a community whose members may be targeted by the government, designed to minimize risk. And this is in the link. It's in this document. So like there's a couple recommended guides and viewings if you're new and if you don't know. But having security culture in place saves everyone the trouble of having to work out safety measures over and over from scratch. and can help offset paranoia and panic in stressful situations. Hell, it might keep you out of prison too. The difference between protocol and culture is that culture becomes unconscious, instinctive, and thus effortless. Once the safest possible behavior has become habitual for everyone in the circles in which you travel, you can spend less time and energy emphasizing the need for it or suffering the consequences of not having it or worrying about how much danger you're in. And I'm not gonna read all of this because it's a lot, but I would ask people to just like give it a look over. The link is in, it's in this document, safety and security curriculum document that A had shared. I think I might go on to the next topic, which is communications options. So just wanting to go over some signals, code symbols, just for communications. A medic team should be distinguishable from the rest of the demo, action, or protest. It doesn't have to be, but it's helpful to know who your medics are. Also, people can just like scream medics, and usually medics will come. Can be done. I'm sorry. It can be done.
Yes, we do. We come running.
Yeah. It can be done without revealing personal identities. By having EMT patches, red star, red cross, red tape around the left arm, something that indicates that you are a medic. If needed, you can establish gestures or code words your medic team could utilize during actions. It's a great time to learn sign language. I really, really want to learn sign language only because my Black and Indigenous ancestors have utilized sign language. Just putting that out there that it's really something that we could re-indigenize and relearn. Anyway, but if needed, you can establish gestures or code words. Your medic team can utilize this is to communicate to the rest of the group particular plans of action without informing cops, fascists, or even everyone else. Like things like regrouping or caucusing or a tactical retreat. The cops they have certain symbols that they use, and like it's important to study what they're also doing too, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But prepare walkie-talkies and two-way radios before deploying. I mean, this is a little harder to do when you're on the ground. Like I think street actions are very different from like straight up war scenario. I mean, it turns into that, but like I think comms are important still. For every one person listening on an open station, 4 people are likely to be listening into said open station. So like, again, have like your comms names down, have like no station is really secure when you're using like a radio, your walkie-talkie. Don't use real names, obviously, or sensitive information when communicating over the radio. Establish proper radio etiquette that suits your affinity, and charge batteries or have an extra on hand. And yeah, this is like a thing that we had pulled from pamphlet. So yeah, you can look that up also in the link. So the last few things I want to go over are scene safety, which I think that is a little bit lower. Nope, so scene safety is probably the most important thing to be going over. So yeah, signs up to scene. Like obviously, it's not ever really completely 100% safe when you're a medic, like a combat medic or like a street medic. But your safety still comes first. And yeah, just use critical awareness to assess your surroundings. I felt really, really foolish that I didn't leave when police were creating kettles within kettles and forming their formations and realizing that, oh, we're getting surrounded and there's no way out, and then mass arrests are going to happen. So just like, you know, you might not want to be in that situation. It's best not to be. Plan around that, but use your personal safety. It always comes first. Body substance isolation is a practice of isolating all body substances like blood, urine, feces, tears, etc. of individuals undergoing medical treatment. That's really important to acknowledge now, especially with COVID-19. Personal protective equipment is also super important. So this is a med kit for you and your patient's protection and to practice safer BSI. Your kit might include the following. We've added like lists in like a lot of our documents and online if you want to just like look at that. But these are all really, really helpful information.
Yeah, I just dropped the Google Doc in the chat. So if people want to see our most recently updated Medikit, you can do that. And then I can start sharing my video to go into the Medikit a little bit. All right, cool. This is a mess. I unpacked like 3 different Medikits and cannibalized them to see what I'm going to take out with me tonight. So I just wanted to go over a couple things. So first we'll start with PPE. As you see here, I have my gloves, my nitrile latex gloves, gloves for handling hot things because shit gets hot in the streets. There's also a lot to be said about tear gas canisters and shit like that and doing that safely. I have this old filthy respirator and these goggles. So this stuff right here is super important because like you can't medic someone if you can't breathe, if you can't see. If you're covered in pepper spray and tear gas, you are on the sidelines for a bit. You're gonna not be able to assist anybody else. So we were joking about it yesterday about how we're not actually frontline medics, we're second line medics, because if we were on the front lines, we wouldn't be useful to folks. So we actually, you know, there's, we'll talk about it more in the decom process about how to keep yourself safe and be able to keep yourself in action and not be sidelined and still be able to help people. So some of the decon stuff that we have is Milk a Mag. I grabbed this bottle because it's a really just simple squirt bottle. You don't have to buy anything. You know, if you have something in recycling, you can use that. And these are pre-made Sudocon wipes. They're irritant spray decontamination wipes. These are, I think, typically sold to law enforcement. I can't remember where these came from, actually. And then other like life-saving things that I try to keep on hand at all times is an EpiPen, an inhaler, Narcan, glucose, which you could literally just get, you know, honey packets for folks, but they do have like glucose packs that are specifically for that. I really like this CPR mask. It folds up so tiny and doesn't take up any space. So this is like a super stripped down medic kit, but I'm thinking for myself for tonight, I want something light. I don't want a big ass like turtle shell backpack because I've done that before. And, you know, it's just, it's, you want to be mobile, especially when the threat of arrest is really high. One of the things I want to encourage folks to get as soon as you can is a headlamp. If when shit gets dark, when the lights go out and you can't see and you have a mess on your hands, I mean, it's not just for the medicing, you know, it's to get yourself into a safe situation. But it really, I think it's one of the most important things in my kit because if I don't have my eyes, I can't do much at all. And yeah, lighter, paracord, duct tape. We ask people, or we recommend people get like black and silver Sharpies, because silver Sharpies are going to show up better on dark skinned folks. So if you do need to, write down any kind of identifying information or like phone numbers or emergency contacts like that, these are good to have on hand for folks. A couple comfort things, right? A rescue blanket, hand warmers. I'm actually going to put the waterproof poncho over with the PPE stuff, because if it starts, if shit starts to get sprayed, if we all start to get sprayed, then that's going to be something I need to be able to reach for. So with the kit, you want to make sure that you have your life-saving stuff and the stuff that allows you to continue to do your work the most easily accessible. Your goggles are not going to be helpful if they're at the bottom of your kit when the tear gas starts getting sprayed. And then just a note on these two, you want to get some that have rubber around, that have a rubber seal instead of a cloth seal or like a foam seal. Certain like construction goggles will have a foam seal, because that's going to absorb all of the pepper spray and tear gas. And so you'll see people who have like lines on the side of their face because they left this on for too long. So this is still cloth. This is going to connect not so much to my skin. Actually should grab a bandana out here for this PPE setup as well. I do sometimes like to identify myself as a medic with these patches. But again, I don't know if you said that, but sometimes medics are targeted because the cops understand that if people are hurt and you have someone who can alleviate the situation, then people are going to get back on the ground faster. And, that's why they kettle people. That's why they keep you for 4 hours, is to keep you from participating in the actions that are going on. So medics are targeted in that sense. So it's just kind of how you have to do like a risk analysis for the situation. Last couple things here. This is also going to be my more, for more intense and high risk situations, advanced clotting gauze. This is going to help stop bleeding. This stuff is harder to come by in like pharmacies. This is stuff I ordered online, or you can get it from like military surplus stores. Compressed gauze and tactical burn dressing. But this is something I don't always carry either, because one of the fastest, cheapest ways to deal with the burn is having, cool water, and that is a relatively cheap resource that you can use. Blister medics, that's going to be, if people have been out on the streets for days and days, you want to make sure that people are protecting against blisters, because if you have a blister, it pops, you get an infection, then this small problem has turned into a big problem. Now you have a foot infection. Now you can't walk on it. Now it's really uncomfortable red. You're sweating, you're running, it's dirty. So a lot of the stuff in this area is going to be like preventative. And that's, the essence of a lot of medic work. A lot of the medic work, you're not going to see the stuff that requires you to use the clotting gauze or the burn dressing. You're going to be handing out water. You're going to be handing out sunscreen and emergency and stuff like that, so people can keep going in a healthy way. And then these last two kits right here this is my wound care kit. I do like to have things packed up in bags, so I will be packing up some of the other stuff in these smaller bags, just so they're ready to go and labeled. This wore off, but literally just duct tape and Sharpie. Wound care, it's a lot of the stuff that's on the kit, just gauze, band-aids, some betadine if people are having people have a really dirty wound and you want to clean the area around it. And we'll go into wound care a little bit today. And I like this dermal wound cleanser. It's just like a quick spray. Again, you're not going to be deep cleaning, sterilizing a wound. It's going to be just to give your body a fighting chance to fight off an infection from something that might have gotten really dirty. So yeah, last thing here, but honestly, probably one of the most used parts of the kit is going to be your over-the-counter stuff. So pads, tampons, maybe some ibuprofen, you got Zyrtec, yeah, sunscreen, sting relief, Kleenex. This is how you make friends, y'all. You get somebody Kleenex when they need Kleenex. You get somebody baby wipes when they need baby wipes, or getting them a pad when they really need it when you're out on the streets is super helpful.
Really.
I think that is all that I want to cover. Does anybody? Oh, there's two things I'm missing here that I need to find. I think they're in my car, but I would recommend getting a tourniquet because they're easy, they're lightweight, and if there is a situation where there is the possibility for life-threatening blood loss, they're easy to use, they're easy to train on. So a tourniquet, and then also for myself, I'm looking for my trauma shears because there's specialized shears that are like blunt on one side so they don't cut the skin in case you need to expose an area for an injury.
Question that I did see is that someone asked if you can make a tourniquet.
So it is really hard to make a good tourniquet.
Yeah.
The structures of the ones that are prefabricated are tested in a way that you can't test. If you needed to, I do have paracord for that reason. I do have, a Sharpie for that reason. You can if you need to, but like tourniquets, I think a good tourniquet can be like $13. So I know it's just, in the situation, if you're in a survival situation, hell yeah, make a tourniquet out of your shoelace, out of like the cord on your hoodie, out of cell phone cord, anything like that, tied as tight as you can. You would insert like a Sharpie underneath and twist it until the circulation is cut off. And you would also want to pad it underneath all of that so that you're not just like digging into somebody's skin. So it is possible, but yeah. And then I see another question, the use of a bronchodilator after being either tear gassed or pepper sprayed. I haven't heard of a negative effect for using an inhaler. I think kind of on the opposite spectrum, like people who, we'll talk about it in decon too, people who are getting pepper sprayed and have respiratory conditions, like they're recovering from COVID or they have asthma. It's going to affect them a lot more, and those are the kinds of people that you want to have their medications ready. I've seen the homies use their inhalers after being pepper sprayed and tear gassed. So not that I know of, but I can't say that definitively it wouldn't have a negative impact on everybody.
So we have a table of contents that you can always go back to at a later time. Forgive me, I'm gonna try to do this as gracefully as possible. But a few things that I do want to make sure that we highlight here is, okay, we touched on consent very, very briefly. There are practices, and here you have a link, a YouTube video that you have access to. Just heads up, it's outdated. It does not represent diversity, but it is a good basic reference to just learn language and how it is that you are going to approach someone when in need of a crisis or in need of any sort of physical or emotional care. But of course, we know asking for consent, as E shared earlier as well, showing your face sometimes can be extremely helpful, making sure that you give a name and that you are as calm as possible. If you yourself feel in a panic, it is best to not run towards someone that is in need of care. So if you have a comrade with you that is feeling more grounded, is feeling more capable, then y'all can switch off. But your energy does definitely affect the individual that is in need of care. So I myself use a lot of the calming remedies that I carry within my pack or my kit, so that I am staying cool and collected as much as possible, and also providing those calming, You know, essential oils aren't necessarily my first pick because they are not sustainable. Hydrosols are another option, or I will speak on this later. You can simply just add fresh herbs to some water for the day, or even fresh herbs to any alcohol base in a small spray bottle and carry that around with you. You're not going to spray that into someone's, you know, face, of course, but you're going to spray that around them so that they can smell. Aromatics are extremely beneficial when we talk about, you know, bringing someone back to their body when they are experiencing trauma and or fear, right? If you have been pepper sprayed or tear gas has been released to the crowd, there is opportunity for fear and trauma to arise. So your calming herbs and sprays, anything that you can use externally, are going to be extremely beneficial if, again, you are given consent to use those. So please be aware that many folks do have scent sensitivities. So we're not just spraying people with good intention, because there is a possibility that they can have an allergic reaction or even be put into a state of uncomfortable, like shock, right? And when I say shock, I don't mean necessarily the physical sense, but in an emotional sense. Discuss some of the herbs. When we are talking topically, I am a big fan of, and I am going to state this very clearly before I continue, is that a lot of this, as A pointed out, is that it is preventative care and it is also aftercare, that we are going to be using a lot of these remedies. So plantain and chaparral salve, if you are not familiar with the two, I will go through in brief discussion with y'all today, at least on plantain. Witch hazel or rose extract is helpful when you are tending to wounds. And then we spoke on honey packets. And also, we have a couple of other different tinctures here. So I'm going to start going down to some of, and this is just an image of my pocket size, very convenient carry kit. You can see here I have some salves, I have some spray bottles, and then just the very basic. This is something that I'll carry on a camping trip or whatever it may be. There are a number of different tinctures there that, of course, the image here does not have things that are labeled. I encourage you to label everything that you do have in your kit, because you do not want to give a herb that is not intended to be given to an individual. So you also have preparations here. If any of you are interested in preparing your own herbal remedies or medicines, I have set you up with water preparations, also alcohol-based preparations, and also glycerite for those that do not consume alcohol. It is extremely important to give full details of what it is that your glycerite or your tincture have, what ingredients are within them. If anything is alcohol-based, it is very important to make that clear. Not everyone consumes alcohol, as we know, for health reasons and also spiritual reasons as well. So you have step-by-steps here. And I just wanted to highlight a few of the healing salves. So if you do venture into making your own medicines, the healing salves that I would recommend are plantain, calendula, pine resin, or yarrow. These are all really great at tending to wounds, assisting with the healing process, and also assisting with antimicrobial, antibacterial properties. So these are essential here. We have some that are antifungal. So again, if there was any issues that later on started showing up, there was a fungus infection or microbial infection, we have antifungals that are chaparral, rosemary, which is one of my favorites because it is extremely accessible. Garlic, thyme, oregano. I always try to use and highlight accessible herbs. These are things that if we have, you know, access to a grocery store, we can pick these up immediately and start working with them in many different ways. All right, so plantain, the reason that we like to use plantain in salves is because it is drying and pulling. So if there's any sort of infection within the skin, it can assist in pulling out that infection and again, assisting with the healing process. So extremely helpful there. So in my daily care, a couple of different herbs that I will carry in tincture form or in glycerite form are chamomile. Again, this is going to be extremely calming and soothing to an individual when they are in a state of concern or fear. And it's also going to assist with the digestive system. So when we are out there and when we are encountering the police, I know for myself, I am in a very sympathetic state, or what we also call a fight or flight or freeze, right? So our systems are going to shut down. The digestive system shuts down, and you can look further into this. You know, we refer to them as the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. And when we can assist people quickly and immediately that are experiencing this very common fight, like freeze or fright, a state, it is best for the long-term health and well-being, emotional and physical for the individual. So chamomile and rose are two that I carry quite often. You know, I am on Tongva Land. I'm not quite sure if y'all have access to California poppy or if it grows out in your area, but you can also purchase this dry. And chaparral is in the deserts. But you can also, you know, purchase or trade with those within your community and start growing your apothecary there. Okay, another plant that I really wanted to speak of was nopal or cactus. If you can't find this fresh in the grocery stores, you can actually purchase a powder form, which I would highly, highly recommend that you have a powder form in your packs, in your first aid kits. And the reason for that is because one is it's extremely hydrating. So you can assist someone who is dehydrated, who's been out in the sun all day, who's been, you know, just, you know, hitting the streets, not sleeping much, not eating much, staying in action. So nopal is going to be really, really helpful with hydrating and making sure that folks have, yeah, the energy to stay active. So again, you have lots of details here, but I do want to encourage you. There's many ways. You can also prepare a wash if you wanted to. You could make a drink of it, as I was stating, right? So you can purchase the fresh cactus, cut that into small pieces, put that into your water bottle, right? Because you're going to be out there. You're going to be also needing to make sure that you are fully hydrated if you are providing care for others. And also, if anybody else is feeling dehydration, you can also provide this to them as well, of course, with consent. You can also use it as a poultice. So if anybody was hit with a tear gas cannon, again, we want to be very, very careful at how it is that we are treating these wounds, but you can simply make a wash of the cactus water and pour that over so that you are very gently cleaning and cleansing, but yeah, and it's gonna help. It's gonna help with that healing process as well. And you can read this later and you'll see exactly why, what chemical compounds are within this plant that make it so. So the plant is cooling and moistening, as we were saying. And I don't feel like I'm going to have enough opportunity to go through full details with you here, but I encourage you. Another plant that I definitely wanted to speak on is calendula. Calendula is very easy to grow. If you need seeds, reach out to your local community gardens, because calendula is typically grown in gardens, especially within the urban setting. And you can make much medicine with this. Of course, the salve, which is its common preparation, and that's going to assist with tending any wounds, minor burns, bug bites, scrapes, chapped lips or skin. So this is essential, especially if you are in a dry or warmer climate, or even cold climate, right? Eczema can sometimes arise, especially when, again, in stressful situations. So this salve can be extremely cooling and calming to give comfort to those individuals experiencing. So you'll have full details on how to make a salve here. You can follow step by step, or you can go at your own desire as you please. And yeah, I hope that y'all try it out if you haven't so already. So calendula has also been shown to assist with healing cough and comforting lungs due to its anti-inflammatory effects, along with other herbs and foods. This can assist with soothing an irritated throat or chest. And this is, again, very beneficial to any pepper spray or tear gas aftercare, right? So you can prepare this as a tea, or if you have a glycerite or a tincture, you can give to your comrades, your friends, after the fact, as aftercare. Aftercare is extremely important, and that's when the herbs really show up for us.
Yeah, a lot of questions about pepper spray and tear gas. Just to real quick talk about the differences. T, did you want to do that? I think that was your...
Yeah, I can definitely do that. So you have an image here, and the differences are extremely important, so we want to highlight those. So the chemical makeup of pepper spray, as you can see on your screen here, is OC, and it is not a man-made chemical. It is taken from an active compound in hot peppers. So this is something that does exist in the natural world, right? So usually it's mixed with water and oil-based solution to make it easier to spray, as well as a propellant. So the tear gas chemical makeup is going to be basically comprised of different man-made chemicals. So we have CS here, and also CN. So these are basically gases. So it is actually an aerosol. Oh, forgive me. It's an aerosol and not a true gas, as it has a powder-like consistency at room temperature. So delivery methods, we can see here, it can be, pepper spray can be deployed in a stream, mist, fog, foam, or gel, where tear gas is most commonly deployed in grenades. So that's what you're seeing. I don't know if y'all have been seeing on the streets, but that is very common these days. And the function between the two is that pepper spray inflames and irritates airways, skin, eyes, and all mucous membranes, whereas tear gas is going to chemically burn and irritate airways, skin, eyes, and all mucous membranes. So there is a chemical difference here. The duration with pepper spray is up to 45 to 60 minutes, where tear gas is going to last up to 30 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, so just some of the, so as many of y'all I'm sure already know, some of the effects of it are going to be extreme burning, uncontrollable watering, mucus secretion, increase in blood pressure, coughing, nausea, and vomiting. You know, it's going to go away, and that's part of the process of helping someone decontaminate, is reminding them that it's going to go away. It sucks, it's terrible, but it's going to go away. In a situation where you might be more concerned is when someone, like we mentioned, has a respiratory condition. That is when you want to make sure that people know where their inhalers are. That might be some, a circumstance where people, as a preventative method approach, then if you know someone has respiratory illnesses, then maybe being in the area where people are going to get tear gas is not the best for them. And maybe that's a conversation folks can have. And then also, I've seen people need nebulizer treatments after this. I've seen people, it says 45 to 60 minutes, it says 30 minutes. That might be like the peak of it, but I think as like in your body needing to recover, it can be quite a bit longer. Another red flag is going to be when someone has open wounds. So if someone has an open wounds and you're getting pepper sprayed in that's gonna escalate things a whole lot. So again, if you've already been injured in that position, you don't want to add to that. So really being able to like de-escalate people who might be extremely rightfully enraged to allow for them to not continue to be injured further is a good way to have that conversation. It's also different from being it's different if you're like just caught in the haze of the pepper spray versus like when you're being targeted by a cop and they're spraying it directly into your face and eyes with like those kind of fire extinguisher like things. I've seen that really mess people up for a long time. Like, the nausea and vomiting's on there, but it's hard to really explain how uncomfortable that can be. But again, for most people, it will pass over time. So now we're gonna go into the decontamination process.
Do you want to show the video first, or
maybe after, so we can go through the whole process, and then we'll show a video that we found on TikTok that somebody made about eye wash. That's really quick. It's like a minute long. So
awesome. Okay, so the first step would be obviously put on a pair of gloves before handling a contaminated individual. Protect your hands. 2, they may be able to see, so identify, or they may be unable to see, so identify yourself as a medic, not a cop. Ask for the consent before touching them. Move the subject out of the contaminated area. And then 3, inspect the individual for any potential medical concerns. 4, remind the individual that the effects are only temporary and you're there to help. I think one of the most important aspects before all of this is also checking in to ask if they have contacts on. And if they do have contacts on, you want to, you might have to decontaminate their own hands, like with a sanitizer wipe, and then have them themselves take them out. So what was I on? Can you scroll down a little bit? 5, remove any clothing that has been contaminated and placed in a sealed plastic bag. Wipe down the subject's skin with a cool, damp cloth, making sure to avoid their eyes. Use a 50-50 mixture of milk of magnesia and water. 7, flush their eyes and skin with cooling running water, or just if you have access to saline solution, for me has really helped in flushing my eyes when I was wearing contacts. 8, instruct the subject to blink rapidly to trigger their natural tear response. Assist them in removing contact lenses. 9, the effects should fully wear off within an hour, but the burning around the face can still continue. 10, restrict access to the contamination area until surfaces have been wiped down with soap and water. I know we got a lot of tech chats, messages, so we'll get to y'all. But we're just gonna show a quick TikTok video. It's really cute. There's some white oogles on there, but it's cute. So here's the.
Approaching someone who has been pepper sprayed, tear gassed. Identify yourself as a helper and ask if they need your help. Have them kneel so you can access their eyes easier. Ask them if they're wearing contacts and have them take them out themselves. Have them stop touching their face. They can hold their legs, glasses, whatever. Grab their eyebrow, lift up to force the lid open, even if just a little bit. Spray the eye from the inside nose out towards the ear. Do the same to both eyes. Repeat as many times as wanted or needed. This will not stop all the pain, but is meant to help the person see again ASAP. Again, please only use water. It is most accessible and it is the safest to put in your eyes. It is what they use in labs all around the world. Most importantly, don't panic. Tear gas won't kill you. It is scary, but together we can push back. ACAB.
So, oh yeah.
I was gonna say that the mask might be an issue. The existing masks may also be drenched in either tear gas or pepper spray. So that might need to be removed. So it's always good to carry, like, I carry around me an extra bags of masks just to give to people if they need to remove them. So that's also another good tip. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say that, yeah, having them tilt their head is really helpful. You might want to do it way more than they're showing in the video, and they're just showing like one quick rinse, but that's gonna be like way longer. You know, if somebody, like, you might need to do that for someone for like 5 minutes for them to be able to see clearly so that they're able to take care of themselves. And I also wanted to say, for the milk and magnesia, yeah, like, I want to emphasize that there's always, in our trainings, there's always a lot of debate about using milk and mag in the eyes. And there's a couple reasons why we don't want to do that. Like I said in the video, it's not going to be as clean. There are other particles that could be in there. If you have, if you were already in an altercation and you have an abrasion in your eye or on your face, adding milk and magnesia or milk, like dairy milk, like people do, could irritate it, could cause more damage. So we do not train with milk and mag on the face. The other issue is, I'm sure you've all seen the videos where people are, they were at the protest, they got pepper sprayed, and now they're drenched in milk from head to toe. And if you're trying to get out of there and you're trying to get home, you are now completely targeted, because that is not easy to wash off. It stinks, like, it's gonna like crust on your clothes. It's not low key at all. If you do water, people can dry off. If they have a change of clothes, it'll be way easier to make it home safely. So so for that, we recommend water. It's cheap. It's going to be cheaper than the milk and mag anyways. And the other thing with that is that the milk and mag it's a liquid antacid, and it is used typically for stomach issues. So it helps people's stomach calm down. It comes in a bunch of flavors. It comes in mint, it comes in strawberry, it comes in all these different flavors. Putting those extra ingredients in your eyes is not gonna help. So especially the minty one, that one sucks. So save the milk and mag for your skin. A way that you can do kind of do like when people get pepper spray, it's typically a mass spraying. So there's some people who just have hot spots like on the side of their face, or maybe their arm got it. What you can do is if you take a roll of paper towels, or if people have their own bandanas, you can add the milk and mag to the bandanas, to the paper towels, and hand them out. And that way you as a medic are not just focused on one patient, one person that needs your help. You're able to distribute it so that people can get that relief and then keep pushing.
I also want to say that I think definitely no milk and in the law, liquid antacid water mixture in the eyes, but definitely on any burning areas. Like, I think the best way to do it is to apply it in making the milk of magnesia water mixture is in a spray bottle, and so that can just be sprayed, and it can be a cooling effect to when people are experiencing the burning effects of tear gas or pepper spray. So.
And then the law mixture is literally just 50% milk of magnesia and 50% water. It's liquid, antacid, and water. That's what the law stands for. So, you know, you could just fill up a couple bottles, make them at home before you go, or you could take the milk of mag with you and fill up other people's bottles as necessary. That's going to be the heaviest thing in your pack, to be real, that in your drinking water.
But it does go bad, so don't hold
Yeah.
on to it for very long. Somebody asked, sorry if I missed it, but is baking soda plus water safe to use?
In your eyes? I've seen that also. Again, I like, water does the job, and I've never heard of that. I think I saw something about it online just earlier today, but it's just not necessary. Like, I saw something that was like, medics need to be highly skilled so that you can get the baking soda liquid under the eyelids, and it's like, that is just, it's just not necessary, because water will do the job. So I can't recommend it. If there's other people who have had good experiences with it, then, you know, that's if that works for them, that works for them. But we're not going to recommend it, especially for medics that are just starting out.
Personally, I have been tear gassed and had my contacts on, and the best people use saline solution in my eye, like for contacts. And you know what? I kept the contacts in. They didn't ask me if I had any. I kept them in. It worked great. But that's for saline. But that's for tear gas, not for pepper spray. So
Right.
I wouldn't recommend even wearing contacts at an action.
If you go to the store, there's oftentimes like eye irrigation, like bottles that have like a spot for your eye, and it pumps out and it has the saline in there. So if you have the funds to do that, and if you have the access for it, that's like a really easy, just well-made option. So cool. Anything else on decon, or can we move on? And we'll take questions at the end too. I'm just going to scroll through this again. I want to encourage everybody to read through it. This part right here just talks about too much heat that may be happening. I looked at the temperature earlier today in Minneapolis. It's possible to just get heat exhaustion even when it's not too hot if you spent days outside on end and you haven't been hydrating well. So these are good things to look out for. I'll just recommend people do that on their own time. It talks about some of the signs and symptoms. It talks about the treatments, which are pretty straightforward. And then recognizing what heat stroke is, and the fact that it is a life-threatening condition. So to recognize that if these things are happening, such as seizures, and people are having a very different state of consciousness, then like if their level of consciousness has changed drastically, then you're going to want to get them treatment with professional medical folks in a hospital setting. These are just some ways like for cooling people down. Sorry for the shirtless white men, but it's what we got. And this is like where you would position cold packs, because those are the hottest regions of the body. Some graphics on heat exhaustion versus heat stroke. Too much cold. I did just want to mention, again, read through this at your own time, but hypothermia, it can happen even in like 50-degree temperature. Like if somebody is out all night, if they've, been drenched in pepper spray and then water, and then, are overexposed overnight, if they don't have a home to go back to, you can get hypothermia. It doesn't have to be freezing out for you to get hypothermia. So that's a good thing to have on your radar as it gets dark, as it gets cooler in the night, to make sure that people are staying warm and are having enough, are eating enough and drinking enough water. Cold injuries, frostbite, and all that. You can go back to that.
Can I just add very quickly is that in preparation for that, also packing an extra pair of clothes if you are carrying a backpack and whatnot with you.
Cool. So just to review quickly, head injuries are going to be happening whether it's in just the tussles that come up, or if it's targeted, targeted attack from law enforcement. Most head injuries you're probably going to have a mild concussion, and you're not going to require much treatment. But if someone has a severe head injury or severe concussion, it's important to check that their neck or spine is injured, or that their neck or spine is injured. I'm not sure what this run-on sentence here is. So moderate to severe head injury. Here's the treatment for that. You want to ask them to stop moving. You want to say, hey, I'm concerned that you have a serious concussion. I saw you get hit really hard. Can you please just sit still? Red flags for this kind of thing would be if someone can't wake up, if someone's vomiting, if someone's unable to move equally on both sides, convulsions. If any of that happens after traumatic head injury, this is where you're saying, like, yeah, we do need to call an ambulance, or we need to transport this person to the nearest hospital if an ambulance can't get to us right now. And again, with all the consent and all the previous conversations of understanding people's thresholds for being hospitalized. Yeah, redo that. Please redo that in depth. I do want to go through break, sprains, and strains real quick. Kind of what we tried to do a lot in this guide was talk about like dividing things into stable or unstable. If you have a sprain that that can safely perform its function, it's stable. Does the injured bone or joint need to be stabilized and protected? If not really, if it's a little sore and you're able to keep moving, then it's a stable injury. Was there sufficient force to cause a fractured or ruptured ligament or tendon? Maybe not, right? If it was, then we're going to call it an unstable injury. Is the injury site receiving adequate blood circulation, or has the swelling decreased the ability for blood to flow through the extremity? So when we're trained as when I was trained as an EMT, what we hear over and over again is we don't diagnose. I can't diagnose in the field typically if you have a broken bone or not, unless there's a bone like sticking through your flesh and or a visible very obvious deformity. So that doesn't often happen, right? But people can have fractures and it's not visible to us. So this is kind of the checklist for, do I need to deal with it now, or can I deal with it tomorrow? Like, regardless, if you have an injury that is kind of debilitating you, it might be a good time to pull back and go home and get some rest, so that you're not injured further and more seriously. But if it is unstable, if all these things are, you're checking the list and you're seeing that it is unstable, then that might be when you might need to think about, is there internal bleeding? Is this going to be harder to fix down the line if I have a fracture or something that needs surgery or immobilization? And is this going to be my threshold for going to the hospital or encouraging someone to go to the hospital, right? So as medics, giving people informed consent and being like, hey, I don't know, maybe there are cops at the local Minneapolis hospitals right now that are following up on people that are coming from the protests, right? Like, they do that shit. They act like vultures, and they wait for people to get discharged sometimes. It's good to know those things. If you guys have any people that are staff in those places that can give you some insight, check in with them to see if protesters are being targeted like that. And then, yeah, red flags. If someone, you know, slipped and it looked like they just rolled their ankle, but they're saying, no, this is the worst pain I've ever been in, that's a red flag. If the pain is out of proportion to the apparent injury, that's going to be a difficult situation. Pelvis fractures, open fractures, facial fractures, even if they don't look too bad, that can cause airway problems. Skull fractures can lead to really big problems. So head injuries are, you know, a really big concern. Rib fractures, because ribs can splinter and cause internal damage. And possible fractures of the upper leg, hip, or pelvis. So typically we would go through, like, when we do our trainings too, we'll do like a survival training. So like if you're in an area that, you know, you cannot get to the hospital, we would talk about splinting and how, like, if you have a 6-hour transport time to a hospital, how to deal with that. I'm going to bypass that right now, but you guys are free to go back and read this. If you have someone with these red flags, I would encourage them to get more medical treatment. So yeah, we have splinting and for open fractures. Maybe for this part, if you do see someone with exposed bone, you're gonna want to get your gauze out. You're gonna want to get your sterile saline out, and you're gonna want to cover that. So you want to keep it moist and clean for any type of exposed area. You want to minimize risk for further damage. So again, getting them out of a dangerous situation, and yeah, find further care for them. So that's how, if you have any kind of, it's pretty much the same for really serious wounds as well, not just bone fractures. And then we're just gonna go right on through to wound care.
So simple wounds, as stated here, offer no risk of life-threatening bleeding and do not represent a significant risk of infection. All right, they can be managed in the field with evacuation to medical care as convenient. So high-risk wounds carry a significant risk of infection and or are likely to cause functional problems during early healing. Wounds associated with life-threatening bleeding or critical system injury are also high risk. Aggressive field treatment and early evacuation for intense wound cleaning is ideal. We're going to go down here. Examining a wound in the field may take some time and involve careful probing with instruments or fingers. Depth of a wound in millimeters is far less significant than the layers penetrated. For example, an eyelid laceration a few millimeters deep may be high risk, whereas a wound on the buttocks several centimeters deep is considered simple. Wounds to the chest or abdomen may enter organ cavities and can cause injury to critical body systems. Emergency evacuation to surgical care is life-saving here. So dressing and bandaging wounds provides many advantages, including prevention of contamination, allowing for drainage, avoiding causing tissue death, allowing for wound inspection, and keeping warm. When addressing and bandaging in a hostile environment, the combination of bandage and dressing should allow the wound drainage while preventing contamination. The goal for long-term wound care is to preserve and enhance blood circulation and to prevent infection. The surface in contact with the open wound should begin sterile and remain that way as long as possible. The bandage should not impair circulation or prevent wound examination.
So that's a lot of just text to say, you know, you want to keep it from getting dirtier. You want to be able to allow it to drain, and you want to be able to check out the wound. This again is a little bit more for like longer term care. So then just treatment for simple wounds is going to be 3 steps. You want to stop bleeding, you want to clean the surface, and you want to remove anything that's, so like if you just have like a big, chunk of glass and you're able to remove that quickly and easily, you can do that. Again, this is for simple wounds. It's not for if somebody is covered in shards of glass because, they were right by a window while it got busted in, and they're being hurt significantly. So this is for simple wounds. It's if you, maybe tripped, fell on something, got something in your palms, nothing that needs intense like debriding. So stop the bleeding, clean the surrounding skin surface. Sometimes I'm sure some of us have had this situation where people in our families where they would like pour hydrogen peroxide or alcohol on your wounds, and that hurt like a motherfucker, and it's not necessary. You can do that around the wound to clean the surrounding area, but that the alcohol and hydrogen peroxide can actually cause quite a bit of tissue damage, and are not recommended. So you just want to irrigate with water. And again, like, it's such a reliable thing to use. There's a bunch of stuff you can do. I do have a wound cleanser that's like really, what's the word, inert. It doesn't have like a lot in it. It's gonna clean a little bit more than maybe just water doesn't provide. So the last thing would be not to soak the wound, to irrigate the wound itself, remove any debris. This would be more for, again, the survival situation if you have to make sure that it doesn't turn into an infection. I wouldn't recommend just poking around in someone's wound if you don't have to, especially if they can, get home and get to a clinic if they need it. We don't recommend closing wounds with staples or taper sutures because it's really hard to ensure that that you're in a sterile environment. So if you just leave it open and you can dress the wound with a moist dressing and applying a natural ointment or a triple antibiotic ointment, then that can allow for it to heal easily. So that's minor wounds. For high-risk wounds, or let me just backtrack a little bit. I know we had some questions about people getting shot by the rubber bullets. That is going to it can cause bone breaks. It can cause open wounds. So depending on the effect, depending on how close someone was, it might cause a head injury. It might cause, for them to have broken ribs or something like that. That's how you're going to determine it. So there's no one size fits all to someone getting hit by a rubber bullet. It's just, there's a lot of things that could come up from anything, right? From projectiles being thrown, from fires. So this is why we structured this guide this way. And so I'll go through high-risk wounds quickly. You're not going to see very many of these. I hope none of you see any of these in the days to come. But if you do, this kind of helps you differentiate between them. What is a sucking chest wound? It's a hole in the chest from a gunshot wound or other puncture. An amputation, it doesn't have to be like a big amputation, right? If someone cuts off like a fingertip, that's considered an amputation as well. It could be impalements, a puncture, and then these other different kinds of wounds. Regardless of the wounds, they're considered high risk when there's exposed soft tissue, bone, and other deep structures that are damaged. So what we want to do with this is the same as we mentioned before, is a wet antibacterial surface. You want it moist and you want it clean until you can get someone to higher care. As far as controlling life-threatening bleeds, you can use a tourniquet. And, we talked about the ways that you can fashion a tourniquet if necessary. Here are proper tourniquet applications. If you buy one, you'll have the guide with you. Like, they usually come with a little instruction packet. So I'm not going to go over this because people might not have that. And then, so for life-threatening bleeds, what you would do is apply direct pressure. So one of the things I showed earlier was the hemostatic agents. They come in granules. Hemostatic means it stops blood. Hemo's blood, static is a stop. So I think static's a stop. Anyways, it stops blood or it slows it down, and it helps the wound to clot. So you want to apply the hemostatic agent or whatever you have, right? If all you have is gauze, use gauze. If all you have is a bandana, a t-shirt, whatever it is, it's most important to stop pressure. It's second most important to keep it clean. And you can just compress the wound between your hand and the bone, and you do not let go. So if you need to trade off, you do it as quickly as you can, but you really shouldn't be letting go if someone has a wound of that kind. For a traumatic amputation, if somebody does lose any kind of appendage, the steps you want to take, a lot of times you'll see in movies or TVs that they'll place it on ice. You don't want to do it on ice. You want to do it on a sterile moist dressing in a cool water or something like that, but not ice, because that can cause tissue death. And then again, control bleeding, split the extremity, and figure out how you're going to get them to higher care. A note on impalements. So if somebody has something impaled anywhere on their body, except for maybe on your face, you do not want to remove it, because at times that artery can be puncturing an artery, and if you remove it, that could lead to them bleeding out faster and having a worse outcome than if you just left it in. So the only times you might do it are if there is something in the airway that is not allowing them to breathe. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to keep somebody alive. And if this impalement is causing them to have a worse chance than it would be to remove them, then we're going to remove it. Infections you guys can read about, this would be in the aftercare setting. We do not have a gunshot wound section on here yet, like specifically step by step. And I know there are some really good guides out there, so we'll be looking to add that. But you can look at the controlling life-threatening bleeds section and the applying a tourniquet section and how to hold direct pressure. You do want to look for an entry hole and an exit hole. You want to see if there are multiple gunshot wounds. And again, one of those situations where you just need to get them to higher care as soon as possible. It can get really complicated if it is to head or face or to your vital organs. And yeah, that's just like a really bad situation that I hope doesn't come up. But if it does, I hope that y'all are able to, react quickly, get higher care as soon as possible.
I feel like there's so many wounds that can come up. I think most of them are like blunt trauma. The ones that I was seeing was when, police were shooting off beanbags. So that's also, there's burns happen. Like, just keep in mind all of these, but like tally up the ones that are occurring most often and kind of prepare for that. But it's good to prepare for these. But in the interest of time, I was thinking moving to the discussion, community mobilization. Yeah. For that discussion, we're just gonna, allow there to be more Q&A. And, I think in the future, we could have trainings too, or y'all can put on your own training. This is all about decentralizing information and the knowledge that it takes to help each other survive. But we talked about medic spaces in response to disasters or actions. And we've seen a lot of really good, medic spaces formulate in response to police violence, whether it's across the border or here.
If any of the facilitators have any last thoughts or tips, I think the one thing I wanted to share was that right now with COVID, I do really want to encourage people to continue to try to keep physical distance from others. It's just so hard to have it feel like the walls are closing in, and if it's not the virus that gets us, it's going to be the fucking cops. And it feels like it's coming from all angles, but there are, know it's hard to do. As much as you can, please do it. Please, wear a mask. That is something I forgot to show for my PPE. I do have a mask, wear a bandana, wear whatever you got. And then I also just wanted to mention that for folks who do not have the capacity to be on the front lines, if you're undocumented, if you got kids, if you're on papers, like whatever it might be, there's positions and roles that folks can take to support your community that aren't putting yourself at risk of being arrested. So just some of the stuff that I've seen before is people having like a recovery home where people are have teas and have the herbalists are hanging out there and getting people the aftercare that they need, following up on wounds and stuff, and just like a safe house where people can go to change clothes if if it got really hot that day, if you feel like you've been targeted. Does anybody else want to add anything before we start taking questions? And folks can start typing in questions if y'all got it.
Just to elaborate on what you just said, is that as medics, as frontline medics being out there, I also want to just highlight like taking care of our emotional state as well. Many times we see things and we hear things and we are confronting situations that are going to be emotionally heavy at times. So I want to highlight like your rest, your hydration, your needs definitely do come first, because we can't be out there, we can't be providing care for our community if we are not resting and drinking as much water as much as we possibly can. So taking care of your emotional as much as you are your physical is important, and there's a lot of information on that in the herbal document for y'all.
Yeah, Jay, do you have anything to add? I mean, especially with people that you might even know on this call, or I urge people to like not plan on some of these Zoom calls or divulge important information. We have some info on attire. There was in the security culture and safety, there was picture of a person that we screenshotted from another really amazing information. So yeah, that's a good just shatterproof swim goggles with a good seal that is not rubber or like sponge, or not spongy, not the sponge kind, but like silicone or rubber, because you don't want things leaking in. Hat to protect hair from chemicals and face, eyes from the sun. Comfortable backpack or fanny pack filled with food, extra clothes, hygiene products, hand warmers, band-aids, and lots of water. Yeah, out on the street style takes us back a seat and utility. Yeah, this is just kind of like covering up your skin, having closed-toed shoes or steel-toed boots. I was noticing a lot of children were on drugs last night. Quite a lot. I was surprised that a lot of younger people were like on acid when we were getting detained. It was very interesting. I wouldn't recommend that when fighting the police, or when when coming to like attend a protest, like especially for medics. Obviously you want to be in the right frame of mind. But does anyone else have anything to add?
I would just say too, for identifying yourself as a medic, I think, yeah, if just to tie it all back to, right, like know your limits. If you're identifying yourself as a medic, if you have the patch or the cross or whatever, people might come to you with some pretty intense stuff. So if you don't feel like you're ready to identify in that way, then maybe don't put that signaling on yourself yet. But you can team up with someone maybe who has more experience. Just on that note, it will draw attention and cause the chaos to come your way a little bit.
Add one thing with like what to wear and attire, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I know Minneapolis, the weather can be very different day to day. So just like before you go out, kind of see what the weather's like. You know, get a poncho. You could find them like at a dollar store for really cheap, or an umbrella if you have it. That also helps with being less seen. But yeah, just kind of preparing for what the weather will be that day, just like as part of your attire.
I do want to ask folks, if you guys have accomplices and you have allies that are employed and they got funds, please, you know, share our IG and the PayPal and the Venmo, and, you know, we're pushing funds through to other orgs, because we will be sharing this recording for for the public to check out, and it would be, you know, appreciated to have an exchange if folks can swing it. And so the question on the chat is, there was a post proposal today to dress not in black because supposedly that is what fascists are wearing, and suggestions to use, so, or anti-fascist or different signifiers. So I think, honestly, like, I think
black does not belong to that. Sorry.
I personally think, and from my experiences and actions, I like the idea of dressing gray. And that idea is to be like, you just blend in, like you look like, you know, some regular citizen just, you know, going to shop for the day, and your clothes aren't, you know, black. All black can be seen as militant. It can make you targeted. It's also, right, used to block up so people are harder to distinguish from folks. But I personally think dressing in like regular casual clothes and then having a change of clothes if you need to not be identified with those anymore is helpful. So I think whatever you wear, as long as if you have something that's really different from what you were previously wearing in case shit goes south, then that's a good option. But I feel like E has some strong opinions on this, so.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, do what you want to do. I don't think uniform is too important, especially because, you know, people can appropriate colors at any time they want. So, but yeah, that's why it's important to just know your be with your affinity, form great affinities, because you can't 100% trust the people that you're on the streets with. In Los Angeles, for example, there's like an entire mall size building of police officers, and like best believe that there are undercovers that are attempting to direct the crowd into kettles, and you know, so just be aware of those things, and also to add to know where the nearest hospital is, how far away it is.
I want to answer a couple questions on here. Disinformation and reliable sources in the Twin Cities. Unicorn Riot is a reliable news source, and they usually are streaming on Facebook, and they're on the street. I would follow them. And Black Visions Collective, they also are a group. And if I think of any other news sources that are helpful, I can share it with folks.
Yeah, and if you have a group who needs any sort of funding for bail, or just share it on our page, and we'll not only share money with you that we've been raising, but also you know, especially if we know, like, especially from Jay, who's on the ground out there, just to disseminate, you know, funds and resources to who needs it. Also for, you know, we're still in pandemic, so like mutual aid resources are also really needed. So like considering those, or collectives. And
yeah, and also we'll have some medic kits ready in the next day, so I will email information if folks are interested, and then I could get a hold of you and give you the information. I will send out more information via email for folks.
And then I did want to also mention, there are a lot of folks online asking us as Frontline Medics to connect them to medic groups, like in their areas. Like, we don't live in New York, but there's folks in New York that are like, hey, I'm a nurse, I'm this, I'm that, can I come join? And I just want to say, like, you know, I like my response to people who ask those questions is like, you know, I don't know you, I can't vouch for you, I can't send you to people that I know in New York because I have no idea what your background is and how you would work with them. But I do want to encourage this for people to train together and be able to create their own networks of support. So if you're a nurse, get your other nurse friends, and you know, you can learn from other resources, from established resources. But it is a really hard thing to ask people to just to work together in such a high stress, high stakes situation like what's happening right now. So, you know, get the folks that you trust, build those relationships, and move forward. I did also want to share this image online. We'll send this stuff out to y'all too. I think I wanted to mention that, like, I think we talked a little bit about just like medic roles and like as de-escalation, as care, and maybe not necessarily as someone who's throwing projectiles or doing cop watch, or you know, doing any of these other positions, building barricades. I just thought this was an interesting graphic to kind of outline that. And very last thing, at the end of the first responder treatment, there are these next steps and recommended resources for folks who do want to continue this training. There are some like really established medic groups and handbooks. So a lot of ours came from a lot for this portion came from Chicago Action Medical. The Where There Is No Doctor is a really valuable resource. So you guys can just click through those links, see what kind of trainings are available, and good readings for folks.
Someone had some detailed questions about the tourniquet. That's all in the curriculum, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it wrote to. I'm not sure if we wrote to mark the time, to document the time. That's necessary. And then there's the question: any advice to somebody who isn't very well connected with folks on the front lines but wants to get more involved? Kind of like to reiterate just what was earlier, like that community has to be built over time. Like you might need to wash dishes and do water runs and go get the supplies for a while before people trust you to be like shoulder to shoulder holding community lines and work together in that way. And that, you know, like we didn't come into this work and just pop up one day. Like these are relationships we've established over 10 to 15 years in showing up in different capacities, and it's trust that gets built over time. So there's not a shortcut, but again, if you have, you know, your own folks that want to help out with the front line, and you have folks that you trust and that know you and can vouch for you, then that can also be an option for showing up. Cool?
Yeah, feels good.
All right. Well, much appreciation to you all so much. We're putting prayers down for y'all, and hoping everybody comes out of this safe, and that there are some shifts in our realities, and you know, that maybe y'all are just like a little bit better prepared than you were before this training.
Thank you. Prayers your way, y'all. Bye.
All right. Well, thank you.
All right, stay safe out there.